I guess for those who haven't been as enmeshed in all of the things that are going on this week in New York, maybe just give us a big picture of what are the big takeaways, the major takeaways from this week? What what has been accomplished?
Thanks, Debbie. I can chime in on that. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Amy, our UN correspondent at Devex. I think for me, what was most remarkable was the urgency that was really expressed over the different issues that governments and civil society and everyone else was trying to address. So you have universal health coverage, climate change, development financing was another big one. But for me, I found that climate change really dominated the conversation and a lot of the action in the way that I don't think we've seen it before at the UN. So we did see some governments, the major emitters, U.S. and China, did not come forward with any pledges. So that's what Guterres asked specifically the UN Secretary General for governments to do, to come to the table with hard commitments. And that happened to some degree, not in the way that everyone wanted it to. And I think that's what my understanding is a lot of the week looked like, essentially, that, we saw some progress on universal health coverage. Governments agreed to a new agreement on this, a landmark agreement. We saw some other pledges surrounding development financing, but not to the level that essentially is needed to really move these issues forward in the way that they need to be moved.
Yeah, and just building off of that, I think, this year was billed as sort of a moment of stock taking, both on sort of the SDGs and on the financing component. And I think that the sort of refrain that I heard over and over, and Guterres sort of emphasized again yesterday, was, there's been some progress, but it's not fast enough, and we need to move faster. And I think a key piece of this is it seems that a lot of the action on the SDGs has been incremental. There have been good projects, good pockets, good, sort of individual moments of success on certain components of the SDGs, but the sort of systemic change that's necessary to sort of accelerate and achieve these quite ambitious goals hasn't really been there. And so I think that's sort of one of the key takeaways. I think it wasn't a super positive week in many ways. I think there was a lot of acknowledgement of some of the challenges that still exist and how far is left to go in achieving this. I do think one interesting thing to note was that there was a greater youth voice present this year, particularly at the beginning of the week and around the climate summit. So that was sort of an interesting new component. I spent quite a bit of time focusing on sort of the role of business and looking at some and talking to businesses and looking at the role of the private sector. And one of the things I would note is that it does seem like a lot of the same actors who are engaged year after year. So I think that begets some questions about whether the movement and the inclusion of the private sector is growing as we move forward.